Okay. Thank you for coming on to today's Comfort Conversation. And in the spirit of Father's Day, as I had mentioned, we are dedicating this week to the dads, to the men, to the husbands, to the grandfathers, to the uncles, to the partners that have equally experienced the trauma of pregnancy and infant loss. We hear you, we recognize you. From the beginning, when we started the Hub of Comfort, I knew from my own experience, from my own husband, Danny, from my own father and father-in-law, that the loss of our son, Pesach, really touched them emotionally. And seeing how, in those days, not being recognized as much as we wanted to be, made it so difficult. But today in 2024, we've seen that things have gotten much better. Still a lot of work to do, but the stigma is not as great. Athletes, entertainers, people in the community have really begun to share and continue to share their story. So I want to introduce you today to one such person, Steve Janiszak, who I met a couple of years ago. He will share our journey. He and his wife Samantha, as clients, quickly we connected, and he's going to share with you today his journey as a grieving father who has put his son Maxwell into their lives. He will share advice for you, important advice, how what things have worked for him and the choices that you have listening to this information. And I invite all the women and the wives too, moms, to join us so that you can not better understand, because you understand what your husband is going through, but for the community, understand the importance of recognizing the men who are going through this loss. So one of our, as I call personal, as the Hub of Comfort, celebrities, go-to people that have really continued to make a mark on this dynamic. Steve, hi, welcome.
Hey, thank you for
Uh,
having me.
and I will wish you happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
We will share, and please share your story.
All right. So my wife and I, we lost our son, Maxwell Seraphim, back in December of 2021. So it's been, a couple years now since we had our loss, but it never goes away. And, like Reva said, I'll share you guys my story and, how it how it became like what you might say a life-altering experience. A lot of times when we go through hard times, we go through loss, we go through tragedy. There comes a point where you can either let yourself go down, you can go one of two ways when you come to one of those moments. And I'll share with you guys how my having lost my son just changed the entire trajectory of my life. And so going back to that time, my my wife and I were pregnant with our first child. And as most couples get pregnant, you think everything's going to be great. You don't really know what can go wrong, what can happen. And in a way, that's a good thing because, unfortunately, we're on the wrong side of the statistic. But for the most part, pregnancies go through without a hitch, and the vast majority of people have a successful pregnancy and a beautiful living baby, but unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. So my wife and I, it was a pretty uneventful pregnancy for the most part. We had the gender reveal, found out I was going to be a dad of a son. I was ecstatic, and whether it was a boy or girl would have really not made much of a difference. But, having a father, having a son it's special to have a son when you're a father. And we went along, and then December hit, and this was all during the time of COVID. And I ended up getting sick, and I was fine, bad cold, whatever. And then my wife got sick, and she ended up in bed for a couple days. She spiked a pretty bad fever. And looking back now, I almost wish I almost wish I met Riva sooner, because then I would have known a little more about what to look for, what to be aware of. I look back now, and hindsight's always 2020, and you can't let yourself get bogged down with the what ifs all the time. But thinking back, I wonder if I was more aware. I put it on myself, not just my wife. Like, I look at myself and I'm like, why didn't I think of getting her to the doctor or the hospital sooner, when I realized that she was spiking a fever and that could be really bad for the baby. So, again, we were kind of naive. We didn't, we just kind of went along with it. And then she ended up, that the week, the subsequent days after her fever came down and she started to feel a little better, she started feeling the baby move less and less. And then finally, the following Friday, she called the doctor and she said, "I'm really not feeling him." And then they're like, get to the hospital right away. Because again, at that point, we didn't even, my wife knew about kick counts, but not like we do now. Like, once you've gone through this type of thing, you really become acutely aware of what to look for, how the baby should be progressing. You become a lot more knowledgeable about these things. So we went to the hospital, and she because of COVID, I was in the car. I couldn't go up with her when she went up to labor and delivery to get checked. And I got the phone call that there was no heartbeat. So that moment is just, there's no words to explain the what that feels like when you just realize that you lost your child. And so I was able to go up and be with her, and walking into that room, I'll never forget the feeling. Hospital rooms are probably not as cold and dreary as they used to be, but I still remember walking into that room, and it was just cold and kind of dark, and just walking over to her and just trying to be with her and comfort her, because there's really nothing more you can do, especially as a husband, other than try to just comfort your wife, because it's a helpless feeling, because there's, like I said, there's really nothing you can do. So we she got admitted. They had to, once they realized there was no heartbeat, they then have to check her out to make sure she's okay, because they have to make sure her blood counts are good. They draw blood, they do all sorts of tests and things. Long story short, they were doing all the tests and everything, and they found that her platelet count was extremely low. And I don't know a whole lot about that, but from what they told us, they said that with a low platelet count, she's at risk of bleeding. So they weren't able to do a C-section to get our son out, or they were worried about her delivering in either way. Because if there was an issue where she started bleeding, they were concerned about her bleeding out, whether or not they had enough blood product or whatever they would need to replace her blood, things like that. So we ended up sitting there. They ran the tests. We went on for a couple days, and the doctors were even kind of perplexed as to why her platelets were so low. And so we went in on Friday, and then finally by Sunday, they we made the decision to have her transferred to Mount Sinai in New York City. So my wife and I live in northern New Jersey, so we're like probably 25, 30 minutes outside of New York City. And the reason that they wanted to transfer her was because the hospital we were in, again, they weren't sure if they had they weren't sure if they had the necessary resources to take care of her if something went bad. So I wasn't able to accompany her when she went to New York City for to Mount Sinai. Luckily, my in-laws, my wife's parents are not too far away. They're in Delaware, so my mother-in-law came up and she accompanied my wife when she went over to New York City to Mount Sinai. So, I had to say goodbye to my wife, and again, it's just talking about this, like as time goes on, like, things, life carries on, and talking about it it's therapeutic because it kind of brings you back to where you were, and it kind of reminds me
Yeah.
why I started the new journey that I started to honor my son, because things get chaotic and life, like I said, life carries on, and
Mhm.
this is also why sometimes when I talk to other dads, I say, when you go through something like this, journal. I wish I would have known that sooner, but when you go through a tragic event, your mind goes in different places, you experience things, like all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff can happen. And journaling that would give, I wish I had that journal now, just to every so often, just kind of like, I don't know, curl up on the couch and just kind of read through it and just, I don't know if it sounds weird, but almost relive it in a way.
No, you have to, in order, we always say we teach you, we give you the support and tools to put the trauma into your life and move through it because you
Yeah.
never move past it.
Hmm.
And that definitely is a good choice, a suggestion, the journaling and revisiting it when you are able to.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, that's something it's some advice I try to give, moms or dad, I guess anybody that really kind of goes through, a tragic event, the likes of losing, a child, a loved one, anything like that. So, but, so my wife ended up getting transferred to Mount Sinai. So I had to say goodbye to her in the ambulance that was going to transport her. And I didn't really know, like, there was a remote possibility that something could happen to her too. So I had to come to grips with the fact that I just lost my son, and my wife was there's a possibility of something happening to her too. So, I said goodbye to her. She went over to the city with her mom, and I went back home to an empty house. Sorry, my allergies are killing me right now. So I went back home to an empty house. Well, not completely empty. We have a dog and a couple cats, so it was, they were there, and you know, it's it is somewhat comforting too when you have animals, because animals they understand. They definitely can understand when you're not feeling right, something's wrong. So, I was thankful and grateful that I at least had my animals in the house to kind of be there for me. But, I came back home and I was alone and had just lost my son. My wife was still hadn't had the chance to deliver him yet. So he remained inside of her from Friday until Monday, which, again, this goes back to the male aspect of it, where just sitting beside her in the hospital, realizing that there was nothing that we could do. There was nothing I could do. I mean, my wife isn't a super religious person, and I'm not super, super religious, but I want to say there was one point where I just grabbed her hand and we prayed because, personally, like, I feel like when all else fails, give it to God. That's just how I feel. And it was a really, I guess in a way, it was a comforting moment, praying about it and just giving it to God, because, I try to have faith that He will pull us through, and thank God He did. But, when I was home after she went to the hospital, she, she was there for a few days, but when I was home, well, thinking back now, this is why I wish I kind of journaled it more, because some of the thoughts become, or the memories do sort of fade over a couple years. But I would put on my YouTube and I would listen to different videos and things, and it kind of knows like and what you listen to as you watch things. But I would listen to inspirational like religious messages. I'm Christian, so I would listen to like inspirational messages and things from videos and whatnot to motivate me and inspire me. And there's one that sticks out in my mind where I came across the story of Abraham and Sarah, and it almost kind of felt like it was meant to be because in that story, and I don't know it verbatim, but I know it's something along the lines of where they were trying to have a baby and it took a really long time,
Hmm.
and they kept the faith and they stayed strong and they ended up having a child.
Yeah.
So it seemed appropriate that that message just happened to play when I was, scrolling around on my YouTube and I put it on, and you know, long story short, I'm gonna just jump ahead a little bit, but my wife and I, we did have a successful pregnancy after. So, God did pull us through. But in that moment, hearing some of those messages was definitely comforting. And then I was home until the Monday. So we went in on Friday, realized we lost our son, and then it wasn't until Monday evening when she delivered him. So I was again, I'll never forget this. I was downstairs. I like to work out a lot. So I was downstairs just on the treadmill and I got the FaceTime phone call and I saw my son over FaceTime. And I still have the photos and screenshots of the FaceTime call and all that stuff in my phone. And every now and then, I will go back and just look at it. I even have a picture. I printed out one of the photos. My wife and I chose not to share the photos because, to be honest, to be very blunt, it can be very traumatic because when a baby is stillborn, especially given the fact that she wasn't able to deliver him right away, the baby can
Hmm.
they don't they don't come out looking like a living baby, if you want to just say it that way, I guess. So we keep those photos between us, and that's a choice that some couples decide to put the photos out there. Others decide to keep it amongst themselves. We chose to keep those photos amongst ourselves. So I actually printed out one of the photos though, and I put it up. I have a mirror downstairs when I work out, I in the basement, I have like a little weight room area, and I put a photo of my son on the mirror. I taped it to the mirror just so I could look at it while I'm, just for that motivation and that inspiration, just to kind of keep me focused and keep me, guided on my path. But
I just wanted to
I-
stop you for one second. First of
yeah.
all, again, well, it's never too late. It's never, time hasn't passed. I always say I'm so sorry for the loss of your son. And that's something for people to know too. It's never too late to acknowledge and to
Mhm.
continue to acknowledge. But what struck me, and I've heard your story so many times, but what struck me this time is really the loneliness that you had.
Yeah.
Um, yes, it was during COVID, so we know that
Mhm.
played a part in it. But
Yeah.
had you shared the information with anybody, with any friends or family, when you were going through it?
At that point, no, nobody knew. I want to say it might have just been my wife's parents
Mhm.
that knew we had lost our son. And the fact that you bringing that up, it touches on another point where it's hard to put that out there because
Yep.
we've talked about in a lot of Reba support groups, we talk about how when you speak about the child you lost, it's hard for other people to comprehend it just as hard as it is for us to go through it. So my wife and I decided to keep it amongst ourselves for at least probably about a month, maybe. And then we came together and we put like a little bit about our story about, we made a social media post because we felt that that kind of helps to mitigate, the
Mhm.
conversations you might have with people in passing, and because everyone knew she was pregnant, and then suddenly we don't have a child. So if we put it on social media, people would all be able to see it, read it, and the majority of our friends and family would know. So when we meet them, we wouldn't have to have those awkward conversations. And so
Yep.
that was what we chose. A lot of people, it's a choice. Riva talks about choices all the time, and that is one of the things that sticks with me is it's everyone approaches things in their own personal way. So that's how we approached it.
Yes, I just wanted to share that that's important too. I was gonna say choice is important,
Hmm.
but to reach out to somebody,
Hmm.
hopefully now you'll have our information, you out there, but to really know that it has to become about you at that moment, at that time. You were able to find some support with animals. You had pets. It's not like you had to go look for a pet. For your podcast and your inspiration and your faith, as well as your exercise regimen. Uh,
Hmm.
and that was good, but it's really important for people to understand. And you need to you the men out there need to share that to get that support sometimes. But that's important, and never to apologize for that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Sam was able to come
Yeah.
out of the hospital.
She ended up delivering Max. Our son's name is Maxwell Seraphim. So she ended up delivering him on Monday evening. She was able to deliver him naturally, which, was a good thing for, especially for future pregnancies. So she delivered him naturally, and then she came home on her birthday, which was Wednesday, December 22nd. So, and then mentioning his name actually brought me back to another there's as I go into my story a little more after she came home and everything, I kind of I'll go into a lot of the signs that I saw, and I never really was all that into signs, but one of the things that struck me initially was when we hadn't had a name for him picked out. So, and my wife always wanted to utilize the first letter of names of family members and things. So for her grandpa Murray, we chose Maxwell, and then we didn't have a middle name for him. So I was scrolling through. My wife is Jewish, so our children are going to be raised Jewish, and I was scrolling online or looking up online Hebrew boy names, and I came upon the name Seraphim. And according to the website that I was looking at, it meant fiery. And I was like, wow, that's appropriate. That really is deep. So because I got to feel him. There was one time where I got to feel him kick. I'll never forget. My wife and I were laying in bed, and I had my hand on her belly, and I felt like a little kick, and I just like jumped, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so like it was just unbelievable. So I felt like he was fiery when he was alive inside her, and thought it was appropriate. And so that was how we happened upon his name, Maxwell Seraphim. And then so my wife came home on that Wednesday, and then shortly after that, we were put in touch with Riva. Um, it's My wife had a friend, Stacy, who had also had a loss back the prior October, and she was already in touch with Riva following her loss. So we immediately were put in touch with Riva, and I cannot say how much of a godsend, how much of a blessing it was to have her helping us because we had no idea what to do. You have a loss like this. We chose to have a funeral, to have our son buried, and we didn't know what to do. We didn't know where to go. We didn't know how to make cemetery arrangements, anything like that. So Riva was pivotal in guiding us through that process. And you know, this is why it's so important to have support group, especially like what Riva offers with the Hum of Comfort, is to have that support and that guidance because when you go through a moment like that, you don't know where to go. You don't know who to turn to. You don't know what the process is. You have no idea. And a
Yeah,
lot of times hospitals will say, and this is something that I'm actually working with Riva on some of these things to try to bring more awareness, especially in the medical setting,
yeah,
because oftentimes in hospitals, from what I've learned, it can be hit or miss. Sometimes hospitals will say, just head home and we'll take care of the remains. And it's heartbreaking the way they refer to some of these things. Sometimes they don't even look at the loss as much of a child like we do, I guess, in a way.
I mean, the hospitals have gotten a little better, have
Yeah,
gotten,
they have. Yeah.
I have to say have gotten better, but
Yeah.
we need, we do need the education and awareness because
Mhm.
nobody's really going to know about it before.
Yeah.
That's why we're going into communities and people and doing what we're doing today
Yep.
on the Zooms so that people understand the support. And it's wonderful that you were able to reach out and that we connected.
Hmm.
And the funeral was beautiful.
Yeah.
That was a choice. It was, family, you, couple close friends, and that was really, you honored him so beautifully. I think that, can you share what is on his headstone?
Oh my gosh.
You remember? I have to look it up. Yeah.
Oh my
If our
gosh.
love, I don't remember. If our love could
If
have,
our love could have saved you, you would have lived forever.
yes, yes. I'd have to tell you, when we're at other funerals or I'm at the cemetery with other parents, those words are really powerful. You don't even realize how you're helping, but I've had rabbis take pictures of that stone. Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
that those words are, you don't realize the power, or we do realize the power of words and
Yeah.
how true. And I think you touched upon how all of us who are going through this type of loss feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're able to take your love to really honor him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell
That's
us,
what.
share with us about those signs, because I'm a believer in signs. Nothing is a coincidence, as I like.
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, we were put in touch with Riva, and she guided us through the process of funeral arrangements and whatnot. And then it was January 31st. It was New Year's Eve day, and we had his funeral. And right before that, thankfully I had not been able to be there to hold my son, to be in his presence, which to this day it'll probably haunt me for the rest of my life. Should I have fought harder? Should I have said, the heck with it, I'm going to get in that hospital one way or another? I might have been carried out by security guards because it was
Yeah, I was
COVID.
gonna say,
That was
you
my
wouldn't
concern.
have, right?
So I didn't fight it, but it still pains me that I wasn't able to be there
Right.
when he was delivered, when he was born. But the funeral home gave us a chance. They, you know, had a little box that we buried him in, and they we had a chance to go in and just spend as much time as we wanted with him. So I did get a chance to be with him. And then we had his funeral, and Riva presided over the funeral for us when she did a beautiful job, being there for us. And I want to say during the funeral, you mentioned, I think you did a little more research into the name Seraphim, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, you did a little more research into the name.
Before it was in Google, it was in the Bible,
Yeah, yeah, right.
the original
Exactly.
Google.
Yeah. So she went a little deeper into the middle name that we chose for our son, and it really hit home. And then Riva was speaking about the signs, and as I was alluding to, when we came home from his funeral, mind you, it's New Year's Eve. It's almost the heart of winter. We had flowers that people sent us in the house. There was a lily that was closed when we left and opened when we came home. And at the same time, there was a hawk sitting on the railing of our deck. And that, for me, that really struck me because we see hawks in New Jersey. It's not unheard of if you go into the more rural areas. We're in more of like not quite a city, but like a town, more built up kind of area. But it was just odd to see a hawk just sitting like outside our window on the deck or in the neighbor's yard, just like staring in at us. And that really struck me. I almost felt like it was my son. He was there, watching over me. And that led to me, a lot of people, I'll preface this by saying a lot of people choose different ways to honor their losses, whether it be jewelry, things like mementos, things that they might do. So I have some different, I have tattoos. So I actually decided to get my son's footprints and the flower and the hawk on my arm as a way to kind of always have something to look down at, to see him, to remember him. And also my wife had said to me, she's like, why don't you, get it on your chest or on your back or somewhere where it's not really out in the open? And I said to her, no, I want people to see it. I want it to, I almost want it to be a conversation piece because it gives me a chance to speak about my son. And again, it's a choice. Some people choose not to be as open about it. I, on the other hand, would never stop at the chance to, speak about my son, my story, and that's just how I've been. Um, yeah, and then, there's been instances where people would say, oh, I like your tattoo. And then I would say, oh, well, this was my son, and this is, the son that I lost. And there was one instance where the office I was working in at the time, the I think a lady commented about my tattoos, and I kind of told her about how we lost her son, and she actually opened up about her own experience having had a loss.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I feel like people are yearning to make that
Yes.
connection, to
Hmm.
speak about what they've gone through. And again, that's where the Hum of Comfort comes in, and just that community and that, atmosphere where people, like Reva said, people might have had losses years and years ago, and they may have kept it bottled up for 5, 10 years and never even thought to speak about it. And then, they find a community like this, and then they can come and they can engage and talk to other people who have gone through similar things, and it can be very helpful. So
Yeah,
it was really neat to just to engage with somebody, and the fact that she opened up like she did was really, really
yeah.
something.
We're seeing that more and more. People are coming, not just 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that's really one of our goals is to develop this community. Yes, to share and to guide your families and friends, the larger community, but to
Mhm.
also be able to lean on us and support us. Again, how you're sharing your story today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to tell us in about 2 minutes,
Mhm.
after the loss, you created something else personal for you to do.
Yes. So a few months later, and it can take time to go through the grieving process and the healing process and all that. So a few months later, I decided that because I like to exercise and work out, I wanted to start my own. I started out on TikTok, and I would just make these little 1 minute videos. I call them affirmations, and I would record myself working out sometimes and things like that. And I called it my own campaign of being 1% better every day. And I know that's a phrase that a lot of people use, but I feel like when you have what can set it apart is when I realized that my son was my why. And that's kind of what put me on the path that I was on. He was my motivation, my inspiration, and I was every single day I would try to be 1% better by pushing myself a little harder and working out and exercising and things like that. And I would make these daily affirmations on my social media. And then it came to a point where I decided I wanted to do something a little more than that. So I went ahead and started going back to school. I went back to school to pursue my master's degree in social work, and I'm now about a year into it. And I've been working alongside Riva now for my internship, and doing what I can to give back to this community, to help other dads, to help couples. She brought me on board as a case manager, so I can start really meeting with. I'm open to meet with women, men or women. I predominantly meet with men because it's easier to have that connection. Women, it's easier because when a woman has gone through it, they need somebody who can understand what it means to have gone through it from their side. So,
I
she
think
brought me on as a
you've
case
helped,
manager.
I'm sorry. I think you've helped also to help women get an insight on their husbands.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So that helps as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So I came on board as a case manager. And as far as my the journey that I started, um, of 1% better, Now I've been going for, it's been over 800 days. So I started it the day after our son's due date, which was March 12th of 2022. And I've been doing affirmations and working out and now going to school. And I also, when I have the time, because like I said, my wife and I ended up having we had our rainbow baby a year ago in April. So my life is pretty crazy now. But I also have had the idea of putting together children's books. I have the idea of putting together motivational books for children in honor of Max, where I can, maybe donate them to hospitals. I can put them on, there's actually something on Amazon where you can put them up there and you can sell them for a nominal, like a little, however much you want to sell them for. Um, I started my own YouTube channel where I'm starting to put together inspirational, motivational speeches and things on my YouTube channel. And I also put together an Etsy shop where I'm putting together digital artwork, motivational and inspirational artwork with the affirmations that I put together over the last 800 something days. So when I have the time with school and everything else going on, that's my goal, is to start putting those different things out there. And, just to me, it's about legacy. I want people to know my son. I want people to remember his name. And I want people to look to me for that inspiration to get through their own hard times. And, I feel like that's what I've gleaned from other people that I've listened to. I'm like, if they can get through it, so can I. So if you guys take anything from this, I want you to know I'm just a regular old guy and I got through it. So if I can get through it, there's no way that you guys can't find the resilience and the strength to pull through it on your own. And if you need help along the way, I'm here, and that's why Reva's here, and that's why Nahama Comfort is here, because I can tell you it is a journey, it's a process, it takes time, and you need help along the way. And, like I said, Riva was here, from the very beginning, and I'm forever indebted. And, it's, I, there's no words for how grateful my wife and I are that you've been there, for us.
Thank you. Thank you. And you didn't mention what's your baby's name?
Oh, our daughter, her
Yes,
name is Charlotte Rose.
beautiful. Yes, I met her many times.
Yes, yes.
Um, so thank you so much. And a couple point really, Steve. I've been on this journey with you, and you are an inspiration. And for people watching, um, listening to Steve's journey, his amazing story, what he's done, I just want to share, if that's okay with you. There are times that he's called me and he's been crying, and the days have been tough. And that is normal. That happens to me too, 37 years later after my son passed away. Um, and you look at Steve and he's done so much. And that works for him. He brought choices up a lot. He already had a podcast platform. He already had animal. He already had these things. So it's really to take what you have in your life, to choose maybe to try something else new, or to look around you. And that's what, you're not alone. That's what we're here to guide you for. So Steve is available. You can reach out through Nechama Comfort at any time. We also want to say Steve is involved in our monthly male support group. It's going to meet this month, June 18th. Usually meets around the same time every month. Steve is on it. It's run by our trauma therapist in Toronto, Sam Miller, and it's really a good place. I'm not even allowed on the group, men for men,
Yeah.
which is amazing. But I want to thank you today, Steve, like always, for sharing your journey, for sharing your ideas, your choices. Um, and we really want the dads, the men, as I said in the beginning, uh, to remember you're not alone. We're here for you. And we're just on that note, I have been talking to Steve. We're going to be launching a campaign, through Nechama Comfort, we run different campaigns, and this is going to be for you, the dads who have lost a baby, or who know somebody that lost a baby, or want to just help. And the money raised will be directed for programming for men and women together. So we look forward to your input, and your sponsorship and your caring also. So thank you, Sam. Thank you always. And for more information, just reach out to Nechama Comfort. Take care.
Take care. Thanks.